This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast, with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor.
This episode of CRM Audio is sponsored by KingswaySoft. Their SSIS integration toolkit comes from lessons that they learned from working on many large-scale CRM data integration projects. KingswaySoft has adapters for the entire Dynamics family, including CRM, GP, AX, SL, NAV, and also Dynamics Marketing, Parature, and non-dynamic sources like Salesforce.com, Oracle, QuickBooks, and online cloud storage like OneDrive and Dropbox. KingswaySoft brings you cost-effective, codeless integration development with unparalleled performance. Compared with other CRM integration options, they provide more features for a lower price. You can download a free trial from kingswaysoft.com. That's KingswaySoft.com. We thank KingswaySoft for their support of CRM Audio.
Happy New Year and Merry Christmas and what's not.
Did you have a good holidays?
Not yet. I'm planning to have holidays soon. I had a break, but nothing major.
Well, this will be a very festive episode for me because it is my birthday.
Oh, excellent.
It's a day when many famous men were born, including Elvis Presley and Kim Jong-un.
Well, that's an unusual company.
Yes, one of my rare talents is, since I was born on Elvis Presley's 40th birthday, I can always tell you exactly how old Elvis would be. He would be 81. I had a good holiday break, but I was glad to get back to work. I had about a week and a half off of work, and I traveled some, and I had some time at home, caught up on my reading of non-CRM stuff, and I'm ready.
Yeah, I feel this morning, I thought that I feel like a, captain of abandoned ship. Come into the office, you switch on the lights and it's empty, and then you switch on aircon and it starts whirling like an engine room. It's like, woo, you think like, okay, time for takeoff.
What the listening public demands to know is, how many times did you see Star Wars?
Sadly, only twice.
Wow.
Twice. I intended to see it a third time during the vacation, but it just didn't line up, schedules, and, well, to be honest, I didn't feel like going by myself. So that kind of killed the third time. But I did see it in 3D on opening night, did see it in 3D IMAX 2 days later.
Best part of the movie,
yeah.
What do you think the best part was?
Well, no spoilers. I really, really enjoyed BB-8. I liked very much the whole First Order, how they were much edgier than the Empire was. They were more, daunting and scary.
Very obviously patterned after Nazis.
Especially in the rally scene. It was the first time I saw the rally scene, it kind of creeped me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, having just watched The Man in the High Castle on Amazon, I saw some similarities there.
I got through the second episode of that, and I was whelmed. So I still have to push through. And
it's very much building up suspense, and all suspense, no payoff for a lot lot of it. But
Okay.
I'm glad I made it to the end.
Cool. Then I'll continue to watch
episodes. Yeah, it was good. Have you followed the Very Lonely Luke Twitter account?
No, and I have not yet followed emo Kylo Ren either.
Very Lonely Luke is funny. It's today it's, I'll never forget the words to Leah before I left forever. I looked in her eyes and said, "Don't touch my stuff." I bet she touched my stuff.
The only one of his I saw was, I looked up at the moon and I said, "That's no moon," and no one laughed.
I hope I changed my answering machine greeting 20 years ago when I left. I don't want thousands of messages. Just kidding. No one will call. On the news, what we have is some updates on some of the features that were delayed in CRM 2016. So what happened, CRM 2016 came out, we all were excited, then we realized, hey, some of this stuff we're excited about wasn't there. Things like voice of the customer, also things like offline and mobile. If you go to the CRM 2016 release preview guide, the last page, they have a table there that has the features that were delayed from CRM 2016. We had a tip on CRM Tip of the Day. Neil Benson deduced that it may be Microsoft's moving to more of a Agile type release schedule where you come to the release date and whatever's ready gets released then, and then the features that weren't quite ready yet or weren't fully baked yet get released in the next release. Do you agree with what Neil said about the Agile release train?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, sticking to a deadline as opposed to a feature set, it's, I suppose, necessary evil of agile development. You work off the deadline, and then you see how many features you can cram in. When you're doing agile development, say, within a team, you know what's going on a daily basis, right? So when release is near, it doesn't come as a surprise that voice of the customer is not going to make it, right? So I think Microsoft could have done a better job communicating the features that are not going to make it. I doubt they decided on the night before the release, oh no, we're cutting it off, right? So it's been known probably a few weeks in advance that it's not going to make it. The same with the mobile offline and some other features. So I guess could have been communicated better, particularly when salespeople are banking on features in advance to close the sales, particularly end of the year. That's the time when people trying to close sales and they pitch in CRM and they pitch in the features, and then the release comes in and you got the customer buy-in, and then they discover that the feature they've been waiting for is not bad, so they have to wait or sign up for a private preview or what's not. So I guess could have been communicated better. I'm all for it. My concern, as you know, I did express it that, okay, this release train, it's going forward and it doesn't miss a stop. The question is that with on-prem customers, we're standing at this abandoned platform, 9 3/4, and every single train, but the annual one zooms past. So my question is, are those features going to make it to on-premises? Voice of the customer, for example. Is it going to be feature online only, or is it going to make it to on-premises? And my gut feeling tells me, due to the testing required, that it may be online only feature.
Because you're right, if I'm online and it doesn't get released this release, well, it's only a 6-month wait and then it gets released. But if I'm on premise, I have to wait till the next fall release, so that's a little bit more painful for that case.
Yeah, and I think voice of the customer is scheduled to release as soon as it's ready. So we're not going to wait 6 months. So my understanding is that it's scheduled for general availability as soon as it's ready. So it could be January or it could be February, but it's here.
I do think that some of the things like the Office groups and the Outlook app, the way they've been previewing those features, I think has been a pretty positive thing, because the Outlook app, when the preview version, it wasn't fully baked enough to use, but getting out there, getting some real world experience with it, what's out there now is a pretty usable product, I think.
True. I'm actually waiting for it to be released, and I just rebuilt my laptop, and I'm kind of not installing CRM for Outlook client, waiting for the app to be released to see if I can live without the client. Also, following Jerry's suggestion on the tip of the day, I'm seriously considering now uninstalling 32-bit and installing 64-bit. I always was concerned about 64-bit because this wouldn't work, that wouldn't work, and now we kind of full steam ahead.
Looking back to 2011 even, they've kind of, the pendulum has kind of swung full arc to where they were going so slow and so waterfall-ish that it seemed like nothing ever got updated. Now it's so rapid. There's so many things coming out that invariably some things fall off and go onto a backlog. The difference is the announcements come out and then the backlog gets created. It's kind of a reverse product backlog. But yeah, it's I guess that's one of the caveats of such a rapid development cycle.
Maybe they weren't fully baked enough, but by having a controlled preview of them, we'll get a better feature ultimately, but still have that rapid release.
Well, and I think it's good because they understand that the potential impact of a failed launch of that functionality could be severe.
Right.
Given it's on the mobile client, given that it's supposed to be offline access, and for the customers that have adopted the mobile client, they're really looking at that as a true productivity tool in their toolbox, if you will. And if that is broken, quote unquote, they would get a lot of backlash from probably some key customers. So yeah, I agree. The preview capability and coaching it that way, I think, is a much better approach than what we saw 5 years ago on how they would handle that.
Well, we all know from our clients who use the Outlook client offline that it's a feature that works well in normal cases, but then you've always got that one weird guy that wants to sync his whole database to it and it blows up.
Yeah. or forgets to sync, and then it takes an hour to sync up all the changes.
Or you have 3 people update the same record and the wrong one updates it, and it causes problems. So I think that kind of feature is something that you need to test in the real world outside of the clean room scenario to make sure it works before, because people are more forgiving of a preview feature by nature than they are if this is supposed to be a official feature of the application.
Right. That's why so many other companies have the beta tag on their products for so long. It's kind of Microsoft doesn't do it that way to where it's perpetually in beta, but the preview tag definitely means something. That it is getting stress tests, it is getting functional tests, and it will become RTM soon. So I like that approach rather than just saying, oh, it's beta, it's not really ready, but you can use it, but we're not going to support it. And that goes on for a long time. So I like the approach.
Right. So here's the question I have about the external party access. So the external party access is basically the framework for security and authentication for external people for things like portal scenarios. So if you have somebody who wants a customer service portal that has cases and knowledge base articles and things like that, and this feature's been delayed, what do you do? I mean, part of me thinks you go ADX because that's, they acquired ADX, they acquired Chan's skills. He's kind of driving the show in that area now, so it makes me think that that's the best answer. But even so, I think there's some kind of trepidation about if we do something now, if we have to do a bunch of custom development, we're risking having something that's out of the mainstream of where the product is going.
That is a slippery slope. I mean, you never want to. Well, you have to kind of look at a couple things. If you're in an implementation and one of the key pillars is that external party access, I tend to not want to go bleeding edge as soon as it comes out, baking that into the plan before it's kind of reviewed, at least in a real world scenario, unless I'm able to do an enormous amount of testing in the preview mode, right? Or in a beta. So given that, I would tend to agree something more structured like an ADX where that's already, the capabilities are already there, unless you have the ability to get some knowledge on high level concepts on how that security is going to be structured from the product team. Not everybody is able to get that kind of information, so, and it may not even be available. But throwing, I'm always cautious to throw custom code on something that may be part of the base product, to where I either have to undo it or I have to work a maintenance schedule or maintenance, roadmap to be able to manage that custom code. So yeah, I would really have to look at the business process and where that criticality of that external party access lies, if it can be pushed off a little bit, or if something like an ADX would be an appropriate fit in that kind of implementation scenario.
Or even Parature, since if they want knowledge management, since that's already integrated there, that's another way. So I think we're kind of in a foggy, misty point right now that'll become a lot clearer within a few months. One thing we did get in preview mode in North America, at least, that's available now that I'm surprised I liked as much as I did is Fantasy Sales Team.
I'm with you. That is really slick functionality, and I could see a lot of different ways to really make that an important piece of a sales process.
So for people who don't know, Fantasy Sales Team was an acquisition Microsoft made last year it's basically it's a gamification user adoption platform, but it takes the metaphor of a fantasy sports draft like fantasy football or fantasy baseball, and which, if you're not a sports fan, and Sean, you're definitely more of a sports fan than I am, this originally struck me as kind of a weird thing because my concept of fantasy sports is a bunch of 40-year-old guys sitting around in a room all day Saturday doing a draft for imaginary people playing each other. But basically, once I saw it, what it does is it's pretty novel in that it empowers sales managers to build point values around certain user actions in CRM, and it's very similar to, if you've ever done goal metrics, it's all advanced find driven, so I can be based around things like opportunities, closing, but even non-sales stuff like how many activities did the person in the call center do, or if you got a custom process, stages in the process, and you can assign point values to that, and so people get points on that, but it adds to it people choosing their team. So inside your company, each person, even the receptionist at the front desk can play as part of this, and they pick their team, and these teams are competing against each other. So the novel thing is, not only am I worried about myself, I'm also looking at how are my coworkers doing that I've put on my team, and so as a result, it does better than any user adoption or gamification platform that I've played with, in that it's not just doing badges and stuff, but it's bringing in also kind of a competitive things. And I was a salesperson for 10 years, and I can tell you, at least in the world I worked in, sure, salespeople are interested in their own paycheck, but in some ways, as much as they also want to be leading the brag board, they want to be beating their coworkers and teammates and things like that. So I add that together, the end result is it drives user adoption because it makes it a game, but also if my colleague isn't using CRM and recording his activities and things like that, I'm going to say, hey buddy, you're on my team, why aren't you doing your job?
Right. And it models that competition internally to where you're driving those salespeople and lower level sales managers, because the game could be at a regional level, at a sales team level. You could have multiple games and multiple levels, which is great. similar to what you just mentioned with goal metrics and how we can do that hierarchy. But it allows the managers to have something, a nicer carrot, right? Than just looking at a graph and saying your bar isn't high enough, move. You know what I mean? It's kind of has that internal drive within those salespeople to really push themselves to be better than the other guy.
Right.
More than just a chart or a graph. I like it.
And it gets to the heart of the fact that CRM in a lot of cases is not a system that users have to use. We try and make it. We try and say if it's not in CRM, it doesn't exist, things like that. But the reality is, if somebody is a good salesperson closing lots of business, they're not going to get fired if they don't use CRM typically.
Right.
And it's not designed for those people, though. What I realize is it's not designed for the best salesperson in the group. Yeah, they'll join in, they'll play with it. It's designed for the ones that are in the middle, say, that want to be better, trying to be better, making CRM a system that they want to use, and as well as sales manager too. When I've shown this to sales managers, their eyes light up because they want more control. They want to be able to control the goals, be able to control how they motivate their people. They want to be able to shake it up and have a different monthly sales contest. Mm-hmm. And the way it works is you can tie real world prizes into it too,
right?
And have the game be you win a $50 Amazon gift card or something. So and it's free too, so it's just much more compelling than any user adoption dashboard I've seen. User adoption dashboards don't really motivate anybody. They sometimes drive punitive actions by the boss, but they don't make anybody want to use CRM. This makes people want to use CRM.
And with the team concept, you can extend that team to where it's not just the salesperson. To your point, I am a super successful salesperson. I'm not worrying whether or not I'm winning a contest because I'm typically going to win. However, my executive assistant or my sales coordinator or my service associate, they may care, right? So there could be a lower level competition between them to see how many customers that they're able to schedule meetings with, follow-ups, second level, how many prospects they're able to convert, those kind of things that then bubble up to the salesperson, driving that adoption. And then the salespeople get more value out of their support staff. So there's multiple ways you can do that with the way that the fantasy sales team is built, and it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how I can get this implemented somewhere if the business process fits.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how this plays in other parts of the world. I know North America, South America, Western Europe. I know that this fits very well. I've sat in a room at the MVP Summit where there were people from different parts of the world, and it seemed like there were certain cultures where the competitive nature of it might not be as attractive. But I think definitely for North America, this is going to be a hit.
Yep, definitely.
It's available for preview in North America now, and supposed to be other parts of the world later this quarter. So it'll be coming really soon.
Last time, did I manage to squeeze in my favorite Office 365 feature or Office 2016 feature?
I can't remember. You tell me what it is, and then I'll tell you if we talked about it.
Yeah, okay. My favorite feature, put aside all the UI, all the gizmos, everything, put it aside. There's one feature. You print the invoice into PDF file, or you edit the Word document, right? And you save it. And then you go to Outlook and you say, attach the file or a file. What it does, it now remembers which files you edited last. So the first files in the drop-down are actually files you most recently used. So if you edit the Word document and say, okay, I finished the editing, let me send it. So before it was like you go to Outlook and say, okay, attach the file, browse the document, browse whatever it is, and you spend like 5 minutes navigating your document structure and what's not. Then you attach the document. Now it's like, attach the document, and here it is. It's the first one in the
Oh, I
drop-down.
love that. Yeah, that jumped out at me too, because it makes so much, and it also works if you work with a document in SharePoint. It will insert a link to the SharePoint document too,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. No, it's
Yeah.
little things like that's my number one reason to use Outlook 2016. I love it.
The other one, actually, I'm going to make it into the tip of the day, but I spent probably, I don't know, close to a day trying to install Office 2016. So I've got 2016 ISO distribution, and I run it, and it runs, it goes to 88%, and then it just sits there for a while, and then error stream in Office because they changed the way it's installing. It's streaming installer. So error stream in Office after like 40 minutes, bang, done, and it gets out. Okay, nothing is usable, or sometimes Word could be usable. And I repeated this process like 55 times, and I read the articles on the same uninstall, reinstall, clean up. I've done all that. And then I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to re-download it. And when I went to re-download it, the one thing, I installed latest 7-zip, and one of the things it installs, the latest 7-zip, in the browser, when you click on the file, it now gives you CRC menu option. So it gives you ability to calculate the checksum of the file right here from the UI. You just click, select the algorithm, and calculate, and it displays. And guess what? The CRC of the ISO disk that I'm supposed to download, and CRC of the ISO disk, and it takes like literally 20 seconds maybe 10 seconds for the 2 gigabyte file. And it's different. I re-download ISO file, make sure that the CRC matches, installs like within 2 minutes, I've got Office up and running. How ridiculous is that? So the lesson is that CRC is there for a reason. So if you download anything more than like 100K, and it takes a while to install, make sure that you do check that. Particularly with big downloads like ISO files, images for the CRM on-premises server would come, for a lot of people it would come in the shape of ISO file. Yeah, so the lesson is for large downloads that takes a while to install and that are critical to your environment, always check CRC. And you can do it from command line. There is a Microsoft command line tool to do that. And you can do it if you install 7-zip. You can do it from the user interface, from your Windows Explorer, which probably makes it 7-zip my tool of the day.
Speaking of tools, I have a tool that is not directly CRM related. I work with multiple monitors, and one of the things with the regular Windows 8 or with Windows 10, the way it works with multiple monitors is it does not put the taskbar on all the monitors. You have it on your main monitor, but you don't have it on the other monitors.
I actually do have it, but it's missing the right-hand corner.
It misses the clock. That's what I'm talking about. And I depend on the clock to know what time it is. I don't wear a watch because my computer has the time on it. So I was looking for a tool that could add the clock, and Display Fusion does that and does it very well. Also, though, it has some other really nice enhancements for working with multiple monitors. For example, you can have different wallpaper on different monitors. Also, and I had a tool way back in the day called Flickr Fan that I loved, where you could like subscribe to an RSS feed from Flickr or the Associated Press or something, and could display that as your wallpaper. And that tool unfortunately was discontinued, and so this has that capability. So if I go into Display Fusion, I can choose a static wallpaper, but I also can choose a bunch of different online image sources, Facebook, Flickr, Instagram, but also things like the aeronautical or NASA type photos. And it's great. Okay, so like I've got two monitors right now. On one monitor, I have the 500px feed of national parks, and on the other monitor I have the 500px or Flickr feed of what you get when you search for dog. And so right now I've got a Great Dane on one monitor and some kind of bird on the other monitor, and then I come back and start my computer up or look back and it's some other kind of thing. Sometimes it's kind of scary because you don't know what's coming next. And I also have people walk by my desk and say, "Oh, is that your dog?" And I say, "No, I have no idea whose dog that is. It's a random picture from the internet." But yeah, I love this tool, and it's also on sale right now. It's normally like the professional version is $25, but I noticed they still have a holiday sale where you can get it for US $12.50. It's worth it if you work with multiple monitors. It also made it easier to switch them around. So if I've got my laptop and my main monitor and I plug it in and I want to use my laptop monitor, but I want to put the laptop on the other side, I can change the way they extend to which one is the primary one easier too.
I remember there was a tool which done the opposite. People complain, like, people have 32-inch monitors, 7,000 by 4,000 resolution and what's not. And people say there's too much on the screen, and programs take over the screen, and then you have to resize them, and you cannot maximize them because they take just too much space. There was a program, the name escapes me, which did the opposite. It took your single monitor and would split it into multiple virtual monitors. So you can dock your programs into a specific area of the screen. So you can use Windows arrow keys to move around and to dock and maximize. So when you maximize, it maximizes, say, on left 2/3 of the screen, and you reserve 1/3 on the right for something else.
So you go back to Windows 3.1 and have a bunch of little boxes all over your monitor?
Kind of, yeah. It's interesting things going around.
But this also makes it really easy to change the way different screens scale as well. It's displayfusion.com.
So I'm looking at it. It actually looks neat. I wonder if it could help me with the resolution issues, because I've got brand new Surface Book that I'm now using and I like it. But one of the challenges is that native resolution is insane. I have to, suggested zoom factor is 200%.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of having the higher resolution, right?
No, it still makes sense. Like when you're drawing and when you're watching high def movies, yeah, it still makes sense. But it makes it difficult to work with multiple monitors when you monitor on one zoom factor and your laptop is on another.
Well, and even Microsoft applications aren't designed for it. Jerry Weinstock found that the Outlook client, the dialog boxes did not render well in the Surface Book.
That's not Surface Book specific problem, but yes.
It's specific to Outlook client not being engineered to handle high resolutions, but part of that I understand has to do with browser as well, because some of those dialog boxes are browser based.
But it's surprising what features I'm missing now from my Surface. So I used Surface 3. This detachable monitor on Surface Book, it's nice, but the first thing I miss is a kickstand.
So that's my question for you or any Surface Book user is, how often and how usable will it be as a tablet? Will you regularly use it as a tablet? It seems to be designed more to be a laptop.
I do use it as a tablet. 3 reasons or occasions when I use it as a tablet. The one is when I want to watch a movie or something like that, and sort of go on the couch and take it with me. And then I really miss my kickstand. I really, really miss it. The other one is when I take notes. The third one is probably along the side of the taking notes. When I do a bit of drawing and designing things and kind of just doodling, trying to make sense of some things, thinking process and some just doing some drawing for fun, then Yes, I do detach it and I use it. And then I find it a bit better than Surface because I've got more room to work with. It's got high precision. Generally speaking, it works better for this purpose. The verdict is still out if I like it more than, say, MacBook Pro, but it definitely kicks butts in terms of performance. It's faster than any MacBook Pro I managed to try. It's okay. You know what? I'm still considering getting Surface 4 as well as. That's, I'm still, verdict is still out on this half-closed screen that doesn't sync the keys. It feels bizarre and very fragile, so the time will tell.
That was my other, on the Surface Pro I had before, even with using a Surface 3, the keyboard never felt as good to me as my Lenovo laptop keyboard.
Yeah, you can't beat Lenovo. Look, Lenovo is ugly as hell, but they are the best laptops. Have you done anything interesting with CRM lately?
Well, a couple of things I want to mention there are some of what I would call the Easter eggs. And when I talk Easter eggs, people not from North America or English-speaking countries might not know what I'm talking about. But the Easter egg comes from things like software or DVDs where you find little features in there. And so when I say an Easter egg, I mean a minor feature that is a nice surprise. Not the stuff they put in the release preview guide, but some of the more hidden features that kind of surprise you when you discover them. So some of the ones that I've jotted down here, and we've written about these on Tip of the Day. One is that business rules and business process flows now work together, which is one of the things I wasn't aware until last week. But nice thing there is that before 2016, you could not really work with process flows with business rules. If you changed a field or something that triggered a business rule, it would work, but you couldn't do things like get the stage of the process flow. You couldn't get the, make things happen based on which process flow was selected. So, for example, if you had two groups, one with one process, one with another process, you couldn't have things be conditional there based on a process flow. And so now if you go to CRM 2016 and you create a rule, you can select the process flow and you can do things, for example, base things conditionally on if a certain process is active or whatever the active stage of the process flow is. So that's one thing that's nice. The other thing this is a 2015 update, one thing, but also 2016 on premises, is subgrids are a lot better now because you can now use JavaScript event handlers on them. So for example, you can do on load of the subgrid, you can change the view that feeds the subgrid, or you can do things based on the selected record, get that data. So those are some nice things that haven't gotten a lot of press, but I think those are some of my favorite Easter eggs that I've discovered. Have you discovered any surprising things that you weren't aware of?
I've been fighting, as you know, some of the installations that involve on premises. My recent fights documented on CRM Tip of the Day. I've been dealing with ADFS 3.0 and CRM 2015, and I blamed ADFS 3.0 for not working correctly, and I retract that. It's CRM that is not behaving correctly with the ADFS. The takeaway is if you want everything to flow smoothly in your on-premises environment, make sure that your CRM domain name, the base domain name of CRM, doesn't match your ADFS. And there's a knowledge base article on that. We use completely different name for ADFS now, but article recommended to use subdomains for your CRM. So you know how people have crm.contosa.com saying, and then you have adfs.contosa.com. That wouldn't work in all the scenarios because CRM.
Now your tip though, wasn't that specific to if you have embedded apps that integrate that authenticate via ADFS?
Now, the tip was specifically that single sign-on is broken if you use the same domain name, because CRM sends back, for the single sign-on to work, application needs to send back a cookie that contains the information about the identity of the current user. And CRM was sending back not one but two cookies. And that was breaking authentication. So effectively, if you do have single sign-on website and CRM, if you go to the website first, then to CRM, then you're all set. But if you go into CRM first, then you try to get to your website, you won't be able to. So it was breaking a lot of scenarios, not necessarily embedded. You just have a web application that uses your ADFS for authentication, and that would be broken if you go into CRM first. So the solution is either use completely different domain name for your ADFS, or use subdomain like crm.mycrm.contoso.com or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it took me a while to get to the bottom of it, but in the end result, so it is an issue. But it's nice because I love this single sign-on when you can navigate multiple applications and maintain the identity that have to prompt user for anything. It just works. The other one I was fighting OneNote integration using SharePoint on premises. That turned out to be a huge battle as well.
So you had CRM Online, but your SharePoint was on premises, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Does that work? I mean, because if you use OneNote, there's no direct way to save the OneNote in SharePoint on premises. There's kludgy workarounds, but there's no share to SharePoint on premise.
Yeah, it does work. You start your OneNote from inside your CRM, and then you go and you can edit it in SharePoint. So it's not a big deal. Not a big deal.
What did you have to do to get that working?
What I didn't have to do. The bottom line is that for OneNote integration to surface, you have to enable integration with SharePoint Online first. Then I'm kind of simplifying it. I mean, the more details on the tip of the day, but you do enable SharePoint Online. Then the OneNote will light up. Then you add your on-premises integration. Then you take off your SharePoint Online integration.
So you have to do the two-step. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't have SharePoint Online, would you recommend people sign up for a trial to get that to work?
It also, yeah. You see, you must. You can't get away to integrate SharePoint on-premise with CRM Online. One of the conditions is you must have at least one SharePoint Online license.
Oh, okay.
That's the way it works.
Okay, so if you don't have one SharePoint Online license and you have SharePoint on premise, even though server-side SharePoint
you won't be able to configure it.
Okay, but if you have one
SharePoint
Online license, then you can do it.
Yeah, that's right. So you must have it. In the end of the day, I actually didn't do by the book, because by the book, I think the identity of the user doing the edit is lost. I did it slightly differently, and I managed to pass through identity of the user editing the notes. It took a while. That's pure SharePoint tweaking and forcing the specific properties to propagate. Anyway, that's sort of way beyond the podcast conversation. It's been a challenge, but it worked. Now, the outcome actually was quite disappointing, because when you're talking to people about this great OneNote integration that you can store OneNotes in CRM, the expectations, if person didn't see this integration before, the expectations are that OneNote will surface in the form, at least a page out of it. So they doodle, and they expect this doodle to appear inside CRM. Instead of the, you see only tabs, tab names. Then you click, then you open, then you see your doodle. But the expectations are that you open CRM, you go to this OneNote tab, and here's your OneNote, at least a page or something like that, a snapshot of bird's eye view or something like that. Because the customer who wanted this integration, they actually didn't do a research and said, we want this. So, okay, whatever. You're the boss. So we did this integration with a great degree of efforts, but the experience itself was deflating. And I said, where's my notes? I say, here they are. No, actually the actual notes. I say, click and open. No, I want my doodle. I want my,
Point. It's similar to SharePoint, where it's more of, instead of the document being integrated into the CRM form, it's more of a pointer to it, makes it easier to get there, but it's not displaying it in line or anything.
Do you think that would be the area where CRM could improve with, let's say, documents attached to the record, and you click, and particularly since we talked about large monitors and multiple monitors, you select the document and here it opens in like it does in Outlook, for example, right? And you can say edit, and you tweak the document right there without leaving the form, and you save it, and off you go.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I guess I would expect if it opened in line like that I would give up some kind of capabilities. I mean, because even like looking at the SharePoint list with the server-side SharePoint, you don't get as many options. You can check in, check out, but there's a lot more options when you look at it in SharePoint. I think it's a balancing act, in my opinion, of giving you enough functionality to be usable there. I can see being able to read the note from the CRM record would be nice. I don't see necessarily all the editing tools being there, but I don't consider myself a expert. But I think that's where like the Delve integration with the mobile apps and some of the mobile integration with the mobile app is going close to what you're talking about. One thing I wanted to talk about is some update on our online versus on-premises deathmatch, because that's going back 4 or 5 months now, and a lot has changed there. So kind of update, what are the things now that are only online versus on-premise, because there's been some changes. Some of the things that are new that surprised me that they work with on-premise that I didn't think they would is the OneDrive for Business integration. If you have SharePoint Online, that works with on-premises as well as online. Also, the new document generation stuff. I had some suspicions that might be online only, but that's also online and on-premise. So with the fall release, we're pretty close again. There's still a few things like the immersive Excel, the new Outlook app, OneNote. Those things still require online, but the majority features, other than those Office groups as well, other than those features, mostly all work with on-premises as well as online now too.
Kind of. As a developer, well, you wouldn't understand because you're not a real developer, but
that's your trademark. You get that in every episode.
Yeah, it's retaliation.
I'm gonna have a T-shirt printed up with your face that says you're not a real developer.
Yeah, but one of the things that again took a lot of my time to figure out, and in the end of the day, it turns out that ADFS 3.0 is no match for Azure Active Directory. One thing that ADFS claims to support is OAuth, and you know that with the web API, right, OAuth is the way to go, right? So
right.
ADFS unfortunately doesn't support ADFS 3.0. Which comes with Server 2012, doesn't support OAuth in the mode that is required for CRM. So that means that you cannot have OAuth working with CRM on premises the same way as you can do it with Azure Active Directory. It's very disappointing. There is a workaround, though. If it's really what we need, then the workaround is surprisingly to enable federation with Azure Active Directory and use Azure as your OAuth provider. So it's a long shot, You would only do it if you need it or if you have federation already going. But that would be the only way to make some of the applications work. Sorry, I retract that. OS does work, but only in active mode. So it would work, let's say, for the Windows Phone application that would want to talk to your CRM on premises. But in passive mode, which is required, let's say, for the website, that wouldn't work. The passive mode, when you don't have a person kind of behind your code, it's a website, so it runs on the server. There's no one sitting there. So you kind of need to authenticate. It's not quite, but kind of the website asks you for identity and uses your identity to try to log in using OAuth, and it doesn't work. That doesn't work. With your phone, though, you sitting behind your phone. It's called active mode, and you can log in and use OAuth. So there are some limitations as far as OAuth is concerned.
So definitely, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, looking at your integration or custom development needs and authentication needs, OAuth and things like that, still definitely have an advantage with online versus on-premise.
Yes, but it's not CRM fault, I have to say. It's ADFS 3.0 that doesn't support certain OAuth features. So I assume that Windows Server 2016 will address that. So let's hope for that. It's not on this occasion. Honestly, it's not CRM fault.
So joining us now is Neil Benson. Neil Benson is a Dynamics CRM MVP. He's one of the most international MVPs. Neil, you seem to move every time there is a new CRM release. You change continents every CRM release or something.
Yeah, Adam Vero referred to me as the itinerant CRM. I had to go and look it up. It basically means I'm a wandering minstrel CRM. I've been a CRM MVP on 3 continents this year. Started in America and moved in the summer over to the UK for 3 months, and now I'm in Australia.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you come on this episode was one of the topics we've just been discussing is some of the features that were postponed and delayed from the release this year in 2016. If you're like me, I anxiously signed up for a trial of CRM 2016, and I quickly noticed that some of the features that I was excited about, like offline for mobile, like voice of the customer surveys, were not there, and then it was quickly clarified with the release preview guide update that some of these features are coming but were delayed. The analogy I believe you used was something about trains or something. Can you remind me what your working theory is?
So release train is not my concept. It comes from an agile methodology called SAFe, which is a scaled agile framework. And the premise is that you have a fixed release date. This is particularly for large teams. So you say, we're going to release the next version of CRM on the 1st of December, and whichever features are finished are going to get shipped on that train, and whichever features don't make it stay on the platform and they can get on the next train. And the way that Microsoft has changed the release schedule for CRM, we now have 2 releases a year. So I'm imagining, now this is not some MVP confidential information, it's just my hypothesis, that the product team has switched to something like an agile train. So Jujar sets the release date, all the product feature teams work as diligently as they can to ship their features for that release date, but if they don't make it, they know they can get on the next train. And if Jujar wants to, he can always send off a new train from the platform whenever he wants. So that's why I think we might be seeing another update, possibly sometime in February, March, with Mojo surveys is one of my favorite features I'm looking forward to. That might actually even come out this month in January.
It feels to me, kind of going on that thought, that the pendulum has swung back and forth a little bit. So going back to CRM 2011, it was forever before we got new features. We were falling woefully behind Salesforce and others, and it swung over to the rapid release cycle, and it seems like increasingly new features are always coming at us. But one of the criticisms with CRM 2013 and the RTM of 2015 were that maybe some of these features weren't as fully baked as they should be. So it feels like we're kind of swinging back a little bit, still keeping a rapid release cadence, but saying we're not going to release this, we're not going to be driven to release this feature ready or not. It's going to be, we're going to release it when it's ready.
That's right. And that's great to see. I think that's the right approach. It's the approach that many of us take in our Agile deployments. If you're using something like Scrum to deploy Microsoft CRM for our customers, then that's the approach that we take. And it's good to see the product team taking the same approach.
And if you're an online customer, that's great because we're always 6 months away from a release. The concern is with the Agile train for on-premises customers, if it continues where the on-premise updates only come in on the fall releases, if that mission-critical feature you're waiting for doesn't make it, you've got to wait a whole year before that rolls around.
Yeah, too bad, so sad, get online.
The only other thing that would impact is if there's budgeting concerns where they're anticipating that feature or function and planning a project around it. But yeah, I tend to agree with Neil on that one for on-prem.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. I've been in the same position trying to advise a customer to wait maybe a couple of months for their release date because they really want to use surveys rather than buy a survey add-on. You might want to wait until January because it's going to ship and then it doesn't. You find yourself in a bit of an embarrassing position. But yeah, good point.
It also as somebody in the community, in the CRM community, a blogger or an MVP or somebody who wants to be an MVP, there's a tendency to want to be the guy who, breaks the news about this awesome new feature. Every release, it seems people are breaking the NDA and publishing things beforehand, but it just underscores that there is no guarantee that feature is going to make it. And there's a reason for that NDA, and if you're the guy or woman who's always like salivating to be the breaking news person about CRM, you're going to wind up with egg on your face if you publish this long blog post and then the feature never comes out.
Well, here's a theory. There's really no reason for the NDA. The person with egg on their face ends up being the blogger who wrote about a feature that doesn't exist yet. And right. It's not as if the competition are going to go out and build a survey feature just because they've discovered that Microsoft's about to release one. You're not disclosing anything that's so confidential that it's going to give the competitors an advantage if they find it out early. I'm not sure if today's modern software world is really worthy of an NDA.
You think it's to prevent the competition from finding out about it, or that Microsoft doesn't want to set expectations that this thing is going to be there then if it's not ready?
So I think the long-term roadmap needs to be an NDA, but the features that are coming out in the next version that's expected to ship in a couple of months, I don't really see a reason for that. I mean, we've seen a couple of releases recently where there's the training blitz that delivers a lot of information, maybe under NDA, maybe not, nobody's quite clear. So there's a lot of confusion when it comes to release time, and I think this time we saw the NDA getting lifted right around the same date as the release, and the software's out in the wild and we weren't sure if we could blog about it or not. So as long as it's not you, me, or Sean that reveals it, then we're good.
Exactly. Were there any things surprising to you, or either pleasantly or not so pleasantly surprising? We talked about some of what I call the Easter eggs, which some of the things that I wasn't aware of, such as the ability of business process flows and business rules to work together now. Some of the enhancements to you can. It's cool. You can actually, in a business rule now, you can conditionally base things on which process flow is active or which stage of the process flow is active, which in my opinion adds a lot of valuable functionality. Also, have you found any surprises or anything like that?
Coming back to business rules for a second, one enhancement I'd love to see is business rules are currently, I think, still listed under each entity within your solution, and I'd love to see them centralized, a bit like processes, maybe even in the same area as processes, so I can see a catalog of all my business rules. Today, you have to hunt around under each entity to find out if there's a business rule. Or what business rules exist within the system. What did Easter eggs are? I don't know if you remember back to MVP Summit, I was hugely skeptical of the, what do they call it, the engagement hub or the interactive service hub I
Right.
just didn't think that that was a great approach. And I think it's early days for that user interface. But when I tried it out, I thought actually it's going to do really well. Particularly, it solves a performance issue that contact centers might have, where you really need to switch between records very quickly, and there's no reason really for your web browser to reload all of the form metadata. So with the engagement hub, the UI stays the same, and you can quickly flick between records. And I think as that matures, then it'll be a very powerful feature indeed. And not just for contact centers, but for regular users too.
Right. If it didn't, I think there's probably 3 or 4 things that they need to do to make it really usable. For example, the long load time. Some of the process flow on it is just kind of weird the way it opens. But as far as having the forms cached and opening very quickly, navigating between them, my comment was that it's not designed for the current profile customer service people that are currently using Dynamics CRM. It's for the people going for Zendesk or Desk.com that need a really rapid response, fast acting, low footprint case.
Yeah. And I think it's an initial release, and I hope they continue to invest in it and we see improvements in it. I think it will become a very powerful user interface for much larger contact centers. But you're right, the initial customer base is people who want to preview the feature and get a feel for it and provide Microsoft with some early feedback, and those considering much simpler products who might be able to get away with that first release and its limited features.
Right. Yeah, I've heard feedback from some actual clients who actually liked it, who before it were not really that impressed with CRM case management. So I think that's a challenge of somebody like us who have worked with Dynamics CRM for years, is we kind of get jaded and kind of get our distortion field around what we think should be, and sometimes it's hard to put ourselves in the place of what a client these days is actually looking for.
Yeah, I've got the same challenge. I'm sure, Sean, you face it as well. You've looked at the product for 10 years and you've got certain opinions about what it should do next. And for a brand new customer looking at it for the first time, they have a completely different impression of how it looks and feels and how fast it is and what it should do next.
Right. Yeah, recently I've had a couple customers who wanted more the ability to create the cases, but they don't want to have to deal with the form and have all the fields on the form. They're in a contact center environment where they're not using something like USD or something like that, but they're just wanting from an account to say pop up a dialog, key in information, make the case, create, and then it goes away. So yeah, and then having that kind of conflict where you're going, but no, there's all this, you could do this and you could do this and you could do this, and it's, I agree. You get that cloud of there's so much potential here, but maybe it doesn't necessarily translate to the business user right away.
So it's shifting gears a little bit. A little preview of Monday's tip of the day. And Neil, this is going to be, I think, the 3rd tip of the day where I've quoted you. I believe there's a 3-tip rule, and then you have to become a tipster. So okay. you may be hitting that limit. So, but anyway, there was a recent discussion that we were in one of the forums that Neil and I are both part of, and the question came up about why is CRM Online storage so expensive? When I look at Amazon Web Services or Azure storage or SharePoint Online storage, CRM Online storage is a multiple factor more expensive than that. And Neil, I thought your answer to that question was dead on. So give the listeners a little preview of what do you respond when you're in a meeting and somebody brings up that objection.
So it's something I've heard once or twice. There are some customers, particularly smaller customers, who have huge storage needs. Maybe they intend to store a lot of documents or photographs. I've seen that blow storage quite often. And they look at the US cost, I think, is $10 per gigabyte per month. So, that could add up and become a little significant for smaller customers. For larger customers, they tend not to worry about it because they know the true cost of storage. Database storage is fairly expensive. If you think about what goes on inside the Microsoft data center, every row that you write to the database is being replicated across multiple database servers. It then gets archived a couple of times and stored locally and then shipped off to a remote storage facility for archival and backup and disaster recovery, that kind of stuff. And it's also duplicated to the other data center within your region. And the same process happens over there. So every time you write a piece of data, it gets copied, 12 places in 2 different data centers. And all of that information storage costs money in order to be able to deliver all of that and provide you with the backup and the redundancy and the data recovery that you're looking for. So that's one of the reasons why it's a little bit more expensive than something like some of the simple database storage you might get with Amazon or even with Azure, which is a little bit less expensive as well. And it's a lot more expensive than the very simple file storage, because files tend not to have all those multiple copies written, all the backup and all the necessary recovery times and stuff like that. So that's why I think it's a little bit more expensive than those online services even that Microsoft offers. It is, however, much, much cheaper than Microsoft's competitors. So if you look at how much Salesforce charges for storage, they tend not to make it very easy to find out that information. And although Salesforce has 2 types of storage, they have database storage and file storage, so they do separate them. So if you were storing attachments, that would be at the file storage rate, which is much less expensive than their database storage rate. But I've heard that their database storage rate is somewhere in the region of $1,200 per gigabyte per month. Many, many times more expensive than Microsoft. So Microsoft has to have a balance between what it costs them and what the competition's charging. And I think $10 per gigabyte per month is a reasonable amount. If you don't like that, of course, there's always the option to offload your storage into Amazon or into Dropbox or into Azure using some fairly simple marketplace add-ons to strip out your attachments and file them into those kind of repositories for you.
I would concur with that, and to me the angst I hear is not so much the cost per gig, it's when there's an unpredictability and a difficulty budgeting for it, especially if you have somebody who doesn't use anything and they get started and then they immediately see a spike of attachments that drive their costs up 10 times or something like that, which can happen. And so that's where I think being proactive and looking at what are the things that can make that spike. And the big one is attachments, notes, attachments, pictures, things like that, especially now that people are attaching photographs and things like that through their phones, and that's where something like the MS-CRM add-ons attachment extractor tool, I think for any especially mid-sized enterprise client should be almost a given for people who are doing like activity tracking, because that's where your growth is going to happen. Most of the time your accounts and contacts and opportunities, that's more of a known static amount that increases but you won't see it spike a gigabyte per week or something like that, like sometimes you can with a lot of file attachments.
I think if enough partners on behalf of their customers, enough customers raise the issue with Microsoft through Connect and whatever other feedback mechanisms you'd like, then I'd like to see Microsoft product team actually build that feature into the platform so customers can provision and choose their own storage mechanism and have their attachments offloaded there. But you're absolutely right, Joe, that marketplace add-on from MS-CRM add-ons, their attachment extractor is really good, works really well. There's a couple of others out there as well. And there's no reason why you can't use that until it's a standard feature.
Absolutely. And with all the other Azure features being tied in there now, that seems like a no-brainer to me. There might be more complexity than I'm thinking here, but that seems to me like an obvious win to do that.
And really what it puts on us as consultants is really to put into the mind of the customer the importance of an overall data retention and storage strategy if they don't have one already. And sometimes, and if they do have an existing, like say with an on-premise implementation, that may very well need to be tweaked because it's not necessarily as simple or as economical as just adding more boxes, right? So making sure that is top of mind to the customer so that they understand that going in makes those implementations, to me, much easier, much straightforward, and much more collaborative. And we don't design things that we shouldn't be designing.
I would maintain as well, putting them in SharePoint gives you a lot more benefit too, because you not only offload the cost to someplace lower, you then have the searching capability and all that, where even if you have them stored inside CRM, I can't search for what's in those documents, whereas if I'm offloading them to SharePoint, I do have the capability to search for and use full text indexing and things like that.
Right, and SharePoint gives you that additional layer of security granularity that you would not have with the standard attachments in CRM. So depending on the industry the customer's in, that may be of high import, like financial services, for example.
I had the exact same discussion with a customer yesterday of how to use their file repository and how to use CRM and which is fit for purpose. And exactly the same discussion came up that their document management systems should be just used as a dumb document management system. We use CRM for document workflow and everything else. Just store the documents in their DMS.
Back in the day, I used to be the guy who said, CRM can do everything. Use CRM for that. Build your ERP with CRM. But I've learned that, use the right tool for the job. And I'll be the first to admit, CRM is not a document management system. And it's not designed to be, where SharePoint or something like that is. And so by tying them together, you can gain a lot more efficiency that way.
Well, I noticed that Convergence this year, last year, a couple of partners have built accounting solutions on top of Dynamics CRM. So perhaps you were right, Joel, about ERP in CRM.
Yeah, go for it. That's all I say. Go for it. Do it. It'll probably be about as good as the CRM module of Dynamics AX.
Right. Just thinking of ERP and CRM gives me heartburn.
You gave some good feedback from our last episode, and appreciate feedback from anyone, but you were talking about our discussion around task management, what we use, and I thought your feedback was great because you basically agreed with me, which I especially appreciate people who agree with me, which is that Wunderlist is the best app for managing your tasks. So I guess, what would you say to George Dubinsky about the reasons he should consider switching to Wunderlist?
So I can't remember the name of the solution that George suggested, but I did go and try it. Workflowy, that's right. And the UI is really nice. The ability to just type a couple of things in and indent your lists and create sublists, that was great. The reason I like Wunderlist is, A, it's available on every device that I use. So I have a Windows phone, and unfortunately I have a work phone that's iOS, but it works on there as well. The web client's really good. There is actually a desktop client as well if you're a Windows user, Windows 8 and above, I think. So that's nice. I can invite other people to my lists. So my wife and I have a shared kind of family list of things she tells me to do. So she really enjoys it as well. And I have lots of different lists. I have a list for each client. I have a list for each industry sector that I'm working on as well. I use lots of different lists for different things. And I invite people from Microsoft and some of my team into those lists. And I can delegate stuff to them, and they get nice notifications, that kind of stuff. So I just find it really useful. The only one thing I wish, and I'm looking for George to develop, so that's why I'm kind of convert him, is for somebody to develop the CRM integration, so that a CRM task gets copied to a Wunderlist task. That would be the icing on the cake for me.
It seems like it should be possible. I mean, it feels like in my opinion, they should improve the integration with Exchange. If they had the integration with Exchange and CRM's already tied with the task integration, it seems like the pieces are there. They just need to put them together. Sure,
that would work. We just need the regarding field to do something clever in Wunderlist, perhaps become the list name or something. I'd be interested to find out what your experience is of printing lists or exporting lists. I've tried to export lists, and I got a JSON file, which is not much use to man or beast. I can email a list, but it has a problem with long lists with more than maybe a dozen or so items in it, and doesn't have the ability to email longer lists.
I wouldn't know about that because I'm super organized, so none of my lists are over 12 items. Well, Neil, we appreciate you joining us, and this has been great. We'd love to have you back, especially with the rapid release cycle here. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about.
Well, I'm back at work on Monday, so my brain's going to get back in gear over the weekend, and I've got to come up with a tip for you, Joel, so thanks for that nudge in the ribs. I appreciate that. And Sean, it's great to catch up with you, too.
You as well.
Hey, CRM Audio fans, here's a few things you could learn when you listen to the Mundanity Podcast. What's the greatest comic book movie of all time? What is the intense minutia behind Doctor Who? What makes a tasty microbrew? And can a jock in high school with a good record collection get away with calling himself a quote-unquote music geek? All that and more on the Mundanity Podcast with Sean and Jim. Check us out at mundanitypod.wordpress.com or on iTunes. Thanks.
This has been CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast. You can hear previous episodes on our website, crm.audio. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/CRM podcast. If you have any topic suggestions or questions that you would like for us to answer on a future episode, please drop us an email at voice@crm.audio. Special thanks to Dale Simmons for our theme music. Go check out his website, dalesimmons.com. Please join us next time on CRM Audio.